cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. We're going to have a look at the persistent cross-site scripting vulnerabilities right now. And they are more severe because you don't need to lure anyone into opening an URL or something. You can just inject it into a forum, a guest book, or anywhere else where user input is stored on the data store to later to be reflected in the website. I'll give an example of that. Here I have a guest book. There's already one message for me. And new visitors can add a message. And the attacker would add his malicious script. To the page. And you see, again, it was a successful attack. It did cause an SQL error because of unsanitized user input. And as you can see, an SQL injection flaw is also most of the times can also be used for cross-site scripting. Okay. So, and now every time somebody visits the guest book, oh, it's not stored. Bad example. I'm gonna get something. I'm gonna do it quoteless to avoid the SQL injection error. So I'm gonna do alert 1, 2, 3. Post. And now it was, I think, successfully added. And other visitors of the guest book will have the JavaScript executed on their machine. And yeah, this all looks very harmful for now, but there can really be dangerous payloads for cross-site scripting. There's also a more rare variant. It's a DOM-based cross-site scripting vulnerability that only exists in the client-side code and is not necessarily reflective. It can also be stored in client-side cookies or anywhere else on the client. And it's a very interesting one because there are no good filters to stop them. And I'm going to look at the payloads. I'm missing out some of the content. I have some examples, but I will just type them later on. The different payloads, you have fake content. You could add a fake login form to a website that's vulnerable to cross-site scripting to lure visitors into logging into your fake login screen to steal their credentials. You can embed HTML objects like Flash objects or other objects. Remote JavaScripts can be used. You can execute scripts and plugins. It can be used for session hijacking. The session parameter is stored in the local cookies of the client, and because you're on the same domain when using the XSS attack vector, you have access to the cookies because you are from the same origin, so you're allowed access to the cookies. You could implement a proxy, generally loading the total content of the page into your own div and replacing all the HTML links with faked JavaScript. And so before you call the actual URL, you could send data to a malicious server by evoking an image on a strange server. And you also have some commercial web hacking toolkits that includes drive-by downloads using known vulnerabilities in browsers. And you could also add some more advanced JavaScript to the website, like maybe you've heard of the tool Jacco. That's a JavaScript bot that's been leaked a couple of years ago. Nowadays there are examples of JavaScript doing optical character recognition in the background, and there are examples of distributed botnets, and combining a distributed botnet with captcha cracking capabilities could do some severe damage. And also a good example of how a reflected cross-site scripting leak could be very harmful is by you could inject a flash object using the reflected cross-site scripting and use that flash object on a very busy site. And because the flash object comes from the same domain as the vulnerable site, you can use the XML HTTP requests to do requests in the background, and so misuse the dozens of users of the legitimate site that shows the banner to do some brute forcing attacks on the other side that holds the cross-site scripting. So you could let them try multiple passwords, try to log in, and so on. So it's not so harmless as most people would like to think, and therefore should not be ignored. Some tools that can be used for cross-site scripting are like tinyurl. It can be used when you have only little space to store your malicious script. Sometimes vulnerable parameters only allow short parameters, and therefore it would be hard to include remote JavaScript. And tinyurl could solve the problem. You have cross-site scripting post forwarders, so you can add a normal HTTP link to a website and